This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss my big opinion. Mark Meets and my take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring. Not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates.
You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it?
Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday,
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
It's 9 p.m. I'm Patrick Christys. Tonight,
old friend was willing to help me get ready for the election campaign and big events. And I think there is something different between government and opposition.
Rachel Reeves is squirming over DonorGate and...
Corruption, and that is the word, is happening in plain sight.
Well, now Angela Rayner reportedly bills the taxpayer 68 grand for a vanity photographer. And there's a new theory emerging about what mega bucks freebie giver Lord Ali might have got for his money. Also tonight...
I am proud to stand here as the first Chancellor in 14 years to have delivered a meaningful real pay rise to millions of public sector workers. It was the right choice for parents, patients and for the British public, the right choice for recruitment and retention, and it was the right choice for our country.
Literally as Rachel Reeves said that, nurses rejected a 5.5% pay rise. And speaking of the NHS...
अगर आप अलग ज़बान या भाषा बोलते हैं तो आप 111 का फ़ोन करके इंटरप्रेटर भी मांग सकते हैं।
Non-English speakers who need an interpreter at A&E skip the waiting queue. English speakers push to the back. What's going on there? And...
7 people killed and 48 injured, 21 of them in critical condition. A third major attack in 3 months.
Are Islamist terrorists coming across the channel? Tory leadership hopeful Robert Jenrick thinks so. Plus...
I have to be honest with you, I was quite disappointed with the number of people that took action in the last action phase.
I'll show you leaked footage of a Just Stop Oil activist whinging about how unpopular they are. And...
Has anyone got any towels or anything?
Women's rights campaigner Kelly J. Keane is attacked in the street by a man. And on my panel this evening is broadcaster Emma Webb, journalist Benjamin Butterworth and ex-chairman of the Tory party, Sir Jake Berry. Oh, and as Starmer gets a new kitten, can you name this back catalogue of political pets? Good luck, everybody. All that and more, 9 to 11 p.m. Get ready, Britain, here we go. Is a terrorist moving into a council flat near you? Next.
Good evening, I'm Sophia Wenslow with your headlines just after 9 o'clock. Rachel Reeves has accused the last Conservative government of choking off investment and suffocating growth and living standards in her speech at Labour's conference in Liverpool today. But not before she faced a protester.
We are still selling arms to Israel.
He accused Labour of selling arms to Israel before being removed, with shouts of Free Palestine heard from backstage. Getting back on track, the Chancellor declared Labour is a party that represents working people, not a party of protest, earning her a standing ovation. She went on to promise to repay the trust of voters and set out what her first budget on the 30th of October will focus on.
So it will be a budget with real ambition. A budget to fix the foundations, a budget to deliver the change that we promised, a budget to rebuild Britain. And my budget will keep our manifesto commitments. Every choice we make will be within a framework of economic and fiscal stability. You'd expect nothing less. We said we would not increase taxes on working people, which is why we will not increase the basic, higher or additional rates of income tax, national insurance or VAT. And we will cap corporation tax at its current level for the duration of this Parliament.
Meanwhile, hundreds of pensioners staged a protest outside the conference centre as part of Unite's campaign against the cut to winter fuel payments. The unions demanding a U-turn on the policy, which removes payments from 10 million pensioners. Unite's Andy Green called it an outrage, claiming the Labour leadership have attempted to take out the debate on the cuts. Now, almost half the total number of migrants who've crossed the English Channel this year have arrived in the 11 weeks since Labour came to power. Despite worsening weather, over 1,400 migrants arrived in Dover this weekend, pushing this year's total to 25,000. 11,500 have now crossed in the space of just 2.5 months since Labour won the general election. In other news, police have said the murder of a 15-year-old in south-east London is a stark and sobering reminder of the danger of zombie-style knives. Police were called to the attack in Woolwich on Sunday evening, where the boy was found with a stab wound. He died shortly after. A witness who tried to save him said the boy pleaded, "I'm 15, don't let me die," as she stemmed the bleeding. The victim's family has been informed, but no arrests have been made and a crime scene remains in place. And nurses in England have rejected the government's offer of a 5.5% pay rise. 2/3 of Royal College of Nursing members voted against the deal in a record turnout of 145,000. The pay award was announced in July, shortly after Labour's general election win. The RCN's General Secretary says nursing staff are determined to stand up for themselves, their patients and the NHS while pushing for reforms. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now it's back to Patrick.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Dozens of terrorists have waltzed into Britain by getting a small boat across the Channel. That's the allegation. Robert Jenrick, a man who has seen all the sensitive information available at the Home Office, said, "In the year before I was Immigration Minister, more than a dozen known terror suspects crossed the Channel on small boats. By now, that figure is well into the dozens. These are people our security services identified as known quantities, threats to our communities, with links to Islamic State and Al-Qaeda, and they waltz right in." Well, those terrorists will no doubt be welcomed into the open arms of these gullible, useful idiots, the Refugees Welcome Brigade. Robert Jenrick also said that around 1,000 migrants who arrived in small boats in 2022 and 2023 have been linked to criminality. Now, the Labour Party has apparently denied this, but I suppose it's a question of who you believe, isn't it? MPs have been banned from hiring foreign interns in case they might be spies. Only those with 3 years UK residency out of the past 5 years will qualify for a parliamentary pass. Now, this annoys me, because our politicians admit that people who we've already vetted might pose a risk to national security. But they expect us to live amongst people who've just broken into Britain. So we, the public, have to take all the risk. Us, the plebs, have to tolerate people living in hotels, council houses, whatever, and we're told, no, don't worry. Or if you do get worried about it, you're far right. But they won't even have foreign staff, just in case they pose a risk to national security. But they're just the same as the Refugees Welcome Brigade, though, aren't they? Because here is a video of some of that Refugees Welcome lot being asked to sign a contract to allow a refugee into their own homes.
Just noticed your placard saying refugees welcome here. Yes. I'm just wondering if you'd like to go down on a list saying you're willing to take the refugees into your home.
Of course not. Only problem is I rent.
You rent?
Yeah.
Maybe an issue?
Yeah, because they've got, well...
Well, if I had any space, I would.
If you had any space.
It wouldn't be a nice place to bring them because it's a bit overcrowded.
Right.
But yes.
Rental?
Yeah.
You can't do it?
Yeah.
Someone else's job? Yeah.
No, I'm sorry, I can't.
You can't take one?
I don't have
the space?
Perhaps the greatest irony in all of this was spotted at the ongoing Labour Party conference. So apparently there was a pro-mass migration stand-up to racism event that was oversubscribed. So they had to, get this, implement a one-in, one-out policy. What, just in case it got a bit too crowded? Was it? Just in case it got a bit uncomfortable for the people who were already there? Look, all of our lives are being put in danger by what's coming across the channel, and our left-wing politicians and the refugees welcome activists want us all to take all of that risk on without being willing to take any of that risk themselves. Let's get the thoughts from our panel this evening. We've got political commentator and broadcaster Emma Webb, we've got journalist and commentator Benjamin Butterworth, and the former chairman of the Conservative Party, Sir Jake Berry. Emma, I'll bring you in on this. You know, we have now a very serious allegation from a man who should know, and probably does know, Robert Jenrick, that we've got terrorists coming across the channel. But, you know, we have MPs there who they won't even take a foreign staffer just in case that person turns out to be a spy. Why is it the public have to take all the risk?
I mean, you'd laugh if it wasn't so terrifying. It'd be pretty surprising, wouldn't it, if Islamist terrorists weren't exploiting these routes. They did it all throughout the migrant crisis. Many of those who were connected to attacks in Europe had exploited those migrant routes and the free movement of people on the European continent within Schengen or whatever. So, I mean, it would be shocking if they weren't exploiting those routes. And I think the Stand Up to Racism event just says it all, doesn't it? I mean, one in, one out. That's a very reasonable policy. And actually, you know, these are the sorts of people who like to go to big events where they have huge fences up that are ticketed and exclusive, and so that they can have their sort of Extinction Rebellion sort of festivals and
Well, Labour Party conference is the same.
But they value their security in those settings. They won't let unvetted migrants into their own homes, but they don't mind if it becomes the neighbour of somebody in a deprived area. I don't think it sounds like it's very much in the socialist spirit, does it?
Why is it OK, Benjamin, for the public to just have to take it on the chin that there might be a terrorist moving into a council house or a hotel near them?
Well, first of all, I can't believe Robert Jenrick is lecturing on the numbers of people coming across in boats, given that he was the immigration minister that saw the numbers go through the roof. He is one of the men responsible for this. So it might be a bit more honest of him to take responsibility rather than throwing stones.
Do you accept that terrorists are coming across the channel, though?
Well, it's definitely a problem that anyone's coming across the channel because you don't know who they are and it's dangerous for those people. But I think the idea that all these people are somehow... I hate when people call them military-age men. They are young people, often, you know, that are trying to build a life, escaping tragedies and war that we, thankfully, have no idea.
Terrorists.
Well, you know, you should be able to vet them and you should be able to check who they are. But it is really ugly to call people that have been through horrors that we cannot imagine and to try and put them in a bracket with terrorists, given that most of them are doing this because they are fleeing terrorism.
Well, it does seem to me as though the public is being asked to take on an immense level of risk here, Jay, which is, you know, you're not allowed to talk about having any issues with that migrant hotel down the road or if social housing is going to be used to house some of these people. But you look at some politicians there, they're being told, oh, we better not even take people who've been vetted originally, people who've come to Britain legally, just in case they might be spies. If we can't figure out who a spy is, how on earth do we know who a terrorist is?
Well, look, the first thing is, looking at the facts, Robert Jenrick would know what he's talking about. He was the immigration minister under Rishi Sunak. He would have had these sort of confidential briefings. If he says this is what's happened, I'm afraid this is what has happened and probably is happening. That's deeply, deeply worrying for people who live here in the United Kingdom. It's all very well for Benjamin to say you should be able to vet these people. You can't. They're arriving illegally. They're coming on dinghies. Most of them
they throw their passports away.
They throw their passports away, and most of them we don't even find. Probably they run off when they arrive in the UK. It's only probably very few of them we actually intercept. This is deeply, deeply worrying. More widely on this point of banning people who are foreign-born, haven't lived in the UK, I think, for 5 years, from the parliamentary estate working for MPs, it's just wrong. I mean, first of all, there is one member of staff who has been accused of spying on behalf of a foreign government. He was British. Whether he's guilty or not, I don't think he's gone to trial yet, but he was British. When I was a Member of Parliament, I often had interns from the United States. More often than not, I had many more interns from Rosendale and Darwen in Lancashire, my own constituency, but we had people come in from the United States. It made Parliament better. It enabled the young people who work in Parliament for MPs to make connections with people around the world. I think this is a bad mistake. And, of course, if you apply it to Parliament, I wonder if the government will be applying the same thing to the civil service. Arguably, civil servants have much more access to confidential information than any member of Parliament ever would. I'm not aware of the civil service banning people who are foreign-born working for the civil service. It's inconsistent. It's just very muddle-headed, and it just speaks to a government. It's already well for Benjamin to say, well, Robert Jenrick was the person who oversaw this. But it's the Labour government now. They have lost control of our borders. 46% of the people who've come to the United Kingdom illegally, irregularly, as they would say, have come in the last 11 weeks. It's extraordinary.
Let's just put that fact in perspective. The numbers that have been coming each day are basically exactly the same as the last 2 years. It's the fact that it's summer, not the fact that there was a change of government. That doesn't undermine the problem.
I thought the sun always shone under the Labour Party.
That doesn't undermine
Benjamin.
the problem. But the idea that, you know, Afghanis in Calais are flicking through the Labour manifesto to check what's going to happen is obviously nonsense.
You say that, but it's not obviously nonsense at all, because before there was at least some deterrent, and that deterrent was not just Rwanda, it was the idea that if you did come and land on our shores, you would not be able to ever legally claim asylum. That deterrent has now...
If Rwanda was a deterrent, then why did the numbers go up after it was passed by Parliament?
Interesting, fine. Well, why do the Germans now want to implement it on the British taxpayers' dime would be my retort to that. But
well, they don't want to send migrants away. They want to offshore the process.
But exactly what Keir Starmer was talking about with Giorgia Meloni last week. He has accepted, by his actions, going to Italy and saying to Giorgia Meloni, this works. Processing people in Albania works. He's accepted, I believe, by his actions that he was wrong on Rwanda. It's got rid of the only deterrent we had, and numbers have gone up.
If the Labour Party, which is said in this article that was published in the Daily Mail after Robert Jenrick's quotes, the Labour Party said that they deny this, that they deny that there's terrorists coming across the channel. It does become a straight shootout between who do you believe.
Well, that's terribly worrying if they are denying it, because they don't know. They don't know who's coming in on the small boats. That's the point. That's why people are concerned about security. And anybody who is familiar with Islamist extremism and the history of attacks in Europe knows that they exploit those routes. So it's just nonsense to suggest that there's, no security risk there. I don't know if that's exactly what they're suggesting, but if they are, then it's just frankly insane. And, when Keir Starmer comes out and talks about things like having an amnesty in order to fast-track asylum claims to clear the backlog, that's the opposite of what the British people want. That's putting a sticking plaster over the problem. And of course that's going to incentivise people to want to come across the Channel. Why wouldn't it? They know that now Europe is toughening its restrictions on freedom of movement. The Netherlands wants to close its border and to be tougher on migration if the EU lets it, which it probably won't. But the fact is that other European countries are now sending a harder message on migration, whereas the current Labour government is sending the message that Britain is soft, come here, our doors are open.
I mean, when you see, Benjamin, that thing at Labour Party conference where they implement a one-in, one-out policy, that is a perfect little metaphor for society, isn't it? Where people think, actually, it's a bit full, it's a bit uncomfortable, we have a finite amount of resources, we better do a one-in, one-out policy for an event that's designed to basically promote mass, unfettered immigration. Does that not highlight the utter hypocrisy of the left more than anything else?
No. I mean, Britain is not full. Only about 7% of Britain is built on, for goodness sake.
Let's build on all of it then, shall we?
Yeah, I think that's... I think move fast and build things, as I think Ed Miliband said today.
Oh, thank you for saying what you mean, Benjamin.
I think we should concrete over much of it, quite frankly, and put some houses up. But the idea of comparing a room, with a health and safety requirement of how many people can be in it, to a large country with masses of countryside and an economy that dearly needs more workers, the only reason we're going to pay for all those retirees demanding big pension pots is by having more workers. So they either want the winter fuel allowance to be able to be funded, or they don't.
Well, it doesn't matter because they're not getting it anyway. You've already abolished that.
We need more.
OK, well, I mean, the
work.
economic case for that doesn't particularly work because it cost us £8 billion, I think it was, in the last year, wasn't it, for migrants who are economically inactive. So there's this idea,
No,
and
that's wrong.
GDP
That's
per
not
capita
correct.
is going down.
That's not correct. They took the number of people not born in this country and then times that by the amount of benefits they could get. But it was a completely fabricated statistic.
It's completely fabricated, right? OK.
Yeah, because most people that weren't born in this country and aren't in work are people that have chosen not to or retirees.
Well, I mean, I think it's not just about money. There are communities up and down Britain that are they're losing community facilities. So in Darwin, there was a brilliant hotel that I used to take my kids to the carvery they had on a Sunday. That was closed because the hotel got put full of migrants. They are being put, particularly in working class northern communities where property is cheaper, they are being put completely inappropriately in these communities with no facilities, no support. There's no new GP surgeries, no extra buses. That one in, one out is a perfect metaphor.
And my main point with this, which is to come back to where we started with the Robert Jenry point, is those communities who are being asked to take all the risk.
Correct.
They are the ones who are being asked to take all the risk. So you can argue about resources, you can argue about whether we should build more homes, you can argue about all of that. One of the main focus that I have is just out-and-out public safety. It's the issue of whether or not we have now got terrorists living in Britain who came across the Channel, and it is ordinary working-class, normal people on the street who are being asked to take that risk in a way that...
Well, maybe they should all be housed in affluent areas, and then I think we would see the elite change their tune.
I think we should take a vote. I think we should have some kind of referendum whereby if pockets of the country decide that they want to be #refugees welcome, then they should take them there.
Correct.
And I would just finish this particular by asking, if you were in a position, Benjamin, would you be taking refugees into your own home?
Well, no,
unvetted.
With London housing prices, it's definitely not a position I'm in.
But if you were, Benjamin,
if I were, I gladly would, just like Gary Lineker did.
Just like Gary Lineker did, which was an incredibly well-vetted individual and all of that stuff, yeah.
Well, just like Lily Allen, I wouldn't.
OK, all right, well, there you go. All right, look, still to come. Rachel Reeves brags about ending the strikes with pay deals exactly at the moment that the Royal College of Nursing decided to announce that they rejected the government's 5.5% pay rise offer. Will Labour now regret capitulating to the unions? But up next, it's the head-to-head. Does Angela Rayner really need to rinse the taxpayer out of 68 grand for a personal vanity photographer? I mean, seriously, what next? What next is coming? This is Patrick Christys Tonight. We're only on GB News.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
On Tuesday, the 3rd of September, at St Paul's Church in Wilton Place in London, a lucky few will sing highlights from Mozart's Don Giovanni in front of a paying audience with an orchestra and under the baton of Gary Matthewman, the conductor and artistic director of Brunswick Vocal Arts. Why is it important that young singers have this opportunity with an orchestra?
There's a gauntlet, if you like, that I think lots of young singers have to run between finishing the relative comfort of their conservatoire education and becoming firmly established as professional singers. Lots of the ones who show real verve and real promise and work really hard end up for a little bit too long being trapped in a kind of cycle of being the understudy. But some of them are ready to kind of go that extra mile and reach that next milestone. And we as a charity thought, well, what a lovely thing it would be to handpick some of these best young singers, give them intensive coaching on the role that they're going to perform, give them the chance to work with professional players for the first time, and crucially, have the thing professionally filmed and recorded. Because the first question all young singers are asked when they meet somebody influential now is, well, what's your website?
You have coached the singer, coaching the singer either towards a recital or towards their performance, their part in an opera. Tell me a little bit about that process.
It's a case of asking them questions which make them bring a character to life, so that when an audience member witnesses this person singing, they don't just think, oh, that's a pretty noise. They think, oh, there's something going on here that I recognise. And especially in a context like this, which is related, I think, to when people sing recitals. Say they sing 20 songs in that one evening. They've got to present 20 roles, 20 mini operatic roles, if you like. And we need to see the change in their bearing. We need to see the change in their approach to the text, as well as to the kind of the technical focus of their singing and how they produce sound.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Tune in to Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. GB News royalty with your perfect start to the weekend. Lucky us. Feisty and fearless guests.
Well, I'm a normal person, so ask me.
Honest opinions that raises more questions than a Gary Barlow tax return. And a few surprises along the way. Might be cold in this studio. That is Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. 8 to 9 only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight. Do you want to pay for Angela Rayner's vanity photographer? It's time now for the head-to-head. Well, look, hey, after there was the old capital gains controversy, wasn't there? You might think that Angela Rayner would want to avoid any more heat directed at her. But she must be quite keen, because it's been revealed that she apparently has hired a vanity photographer costing you, the taxpayer, £68,000 a year. The first Deputy Prime Minister to be granted one. Now, back in 2021, she grilled Boris for spending your cash on photographers whilst children went hungry, following a £1,000 cut in universal credit. Well, now, pensioners will freeze to death following Labour's cut to the winter fuel allowance. All the while, Rayner gets to indulge in getting snapped by her costly new hire. English commentator and football player Gary Neville, he chirped in, criticising the level of attention that all of this stuff is getting.
Absolutely incredible that this level of attention is now being paid to a Labour Prime Minister. When I look at the absolute cronyism that we watched for years under that, it was just let go.
But given Rayner's position and her past criticisms of those doing the exact same thing that she is doing now, does the Deputy Prime Minister really need a £68,000 a year taxpayer-funded photographer? Let me know your thoughts. Go to gbnews.com/your say, or you can tweet me at GBNews. Joining me now to debate this is the former Conservative MP Andrea Jenkins and author and journalist Rebecca Reid. Both of you, thank you very much. Great to have you both on the show. Andrea, I'll start with you. Does Angela Rayner need a 68 grand a year vanity photographer?
It certainly doesn't, and it's what does it look like? I mean, I think she should be nicknamed Rayner the Drainer. She's draining taxpayers' resources, actually. But they're just so out of touch. That's what I find frustrating. I can't stand hypocrisy, the way they criticised, you know, my Conservative governments over the years, and she was the worst critic. And she's been getting all these donations, getting her clothes paid for. And now she's in government, she's spending nearly 70 grand of taxpayers' money. I think it's completely off.
Rebecca, for me, it's that tweet, isn't it, really? It's not the issue itself, maybe, because other people who've gone before her, as no doubt you will point out, have done the exact same thing. It's that tweet on the screen right now. Instead of spending more taxpayers' money on more photographers for the sake of his own vanity, the Prime Minister should prioritise feeding the children. That was Angela Rayner a couple of years ago. So is she a hypocrite here?
I don't think she's a hypocrite. I think she did do a lot of tweets she probably wishes she hadn't done. But Boris Johnson's photographer, Andrew Parsons, was on £100,000 a year in 2010. So that is quite a staggering difference if you adjust for inflation for how much they were getting paid. And I think I understand that Andrea knows Westminster, but I think I know print journalism and online journalism probably better. So I would just say the main reason that you have to have a photographer is that you can't write a story about someone doing something if you don't have an image to accompany it. So the reason that she has a photographer who is a civil servant and a member of the communication communications team more widely, which comes out of her team budget. The reason she has that is simply because you can't cover what she's doing if you don't have images. And if you don't have your own photographer, you can't guarantee that there are images.
OK, so Andrea, from that perspective then, apparently it's necessary.
And a lot of the videos got done on my phone. And, even as an MP over the years, I had my phone. I've been editing videos myself over the years. I don't expect her to do that because she's obviously busy being the Deputy Prime Minister. But I'm just saying, you don't need somebody. She's got a big team. Anyone can take a picture on the phone. I mean, look at in the Daily Mail earlier. She was having a picture drinking a bottle of cider or a glass of cider or something. Does she really need someone paid nearly 70 grand's worth of taxpayers' money to take pictures like that? I don't think so.
Rebecca, does she?
It's about branding. There's a reason that she's better liked still and polls better than than a lot of Tory politicians.
What, even in recent polls? Yeah.
There is something. I'm not going to get into numbers, Andrea, but I've looked and she's doing better than. I don't want to be rude. But she is pictured doing things like that for a reason, because people find it likeable. It's relatable.
Do we have to pay for that, though, Rebecca? That's the point. I mean, it's easy to get pictured by stuff, but why am I paying, and are you paying, and everyone we know paying, for Angela Rayner to have a nice picture of her drinking something fruity?
We're paying a photographer because photography is a skill and is a job, and you can't have somebody in your team who is taking photographs and accompanying you to events to photograph you who isn't properly paid for that. I don't think you would suggest that any other kind of photographer shouldn't be properly paid for their job. And this is a member of a team. He's part of the communications team. So it's also about structuring it, liaising with the press, getting the photos to the right person. This is the bigger job.
Do you not think it looks awful, though? I mean, we're taking money off our pensioners, and she's paying nearly 70 grand for a photographer. I think it looks awful. And also, I found a clip early this morning of Starmer in June speaking to some NHS workers. And he actually had the goal to say, politicians have become too self-entitled. That was in June. And what are they doing? Become the most self-entitled I've ever seen in government.
I mean, that is a point, Rebecca. So, I mean, again, there's receipts for all of this stuff, isn't there? Which is that if they hadn't been so puritanical before, I don't really think people would massively care. But the fact is, they have been. And Angela Rayner there had the gall to, when Boris did this, say, well, what about the starving children? Well, I would clap back, Rebecca, and say, well, what about the freezing cold starving pensioners? Labour's own initial impact assessment, which was done when they were in opposition, suggested that as many as 4,000 pensioners might die this winter as a reduction of the winter fuel payment kicks in. But she's looking to look good in a new pantsuit at Taylor Swift or whatever, isn't she? That's great.
I mean, there's so many things there, Patrick. You talked for so long. The first thing to tackle probably is this kind of false equivalence, and this is very much like when kind of your dad gets on Facebook and starts saying, "Why can't we pay nurses as much as footballers?" It's not really how economics works. So Angela Rayner was wrong to make an equivalence between £100,000 on a photographer and children, absolutely. But also, we are wrong to be talking about this now. The amount of money that photographer costs would not fix a single problem in this country for more than about half an hour. There are thousands and thousands and thousands of people in endemic poverty as a result of the Tory government being in power for far too long and not putting in the infrastructure we needed. And to suggest that getting rid of one £68,000 salary would fix that is a complete
Think of all the £300 out of that £60,000 salary where pensioners could, get the fuel allowance.
Andrea, how many pensioners are there in this country?
Well, at the end of the day, they shouldn't have stopped it, and it's what it looks like. You cannot be in government and do as I say, not as I do. Put the pensioners.
I'm not pro scrapping it. I'm pro means testing it, which is much more sensible. We shouldn't be giving it to people just because they turn.
Yeah. But I suppose, Rebecca, it is just everything they've said before. And when I look at this now, and I think, well, if you needed to have, a new wardrobe because you had to look the part, and you needed to be able to disappear off to New York for a few days because you needed to relax, or whether it was to go to Taylor Swift or whatever it was, and you need a photographer now because it helps with your brand. I mean, seriously, what next is it? Someone needs to have Botox, or someone needs to have tooth whitening, because then that way are we going to end up on the hook for that stuff?
As someone who has tried to charge get their accountant to sign off on Botox as a business expense, I do respect But I think that the question is this an appropriate, like, do we want donations or not? Like Andrea, for instance, got, £12,000 when she was doing her campaign for office expenses. And that was completely legal.
But that was literally for
was it office
literature, my
expenses?
campaign. Because unlike the Labour Party, who actually give money to their candidates, we've got to get it from business. So not a penny's ever been spent on me personally. It's gone on literature, paying for delivery. My donors for my election campaigns never paid for any of my clothes or anything as such.
All right, final point, Rebecca. Sorry, I just want to ask you this, Rebecca, quickly. So that's all right, because we were a bit pressed for time. Is it fair to say that, at the very least, from what we've seen from the Labour Party so far, they are just as bad as the Tories?
No, of course it's not, because they're trying, well, for lots of reasons. But apart from anything else, a really good equivalence is Boris Johnson's refurb. And the issue with that wasn't that he had the flat redone. It looked hideous. It definitely needed redoing. They picked a interior design with fantastic taste. The issue is how things are declared and how honest people are. And there are blocks on that copybook from Labour. However, predominantly, they have been very honest.
They hid donations in office costs. The free clothes, they hid it. I mean, if that's not being devious, I don't know what is.
It's not being devious at all. That's a legitimate cost. If you are campaigning and you need those,
it should have been under gifts. It should have been under gifts. Get clothes bought, put it under gifts.
But that's very specific. Like that's you.
Specific to Angela Rayner, who we're talking about.
There isn't. I have no.
And Rachel Reeves, who hid it as well.
Let's let Rebecca have the word, and then we'll go.
Sorry.
If you're fighting a campaign, it's completely appropriate to need professional outfits. There is no issue with that at all. They might not have filled out the form right, but morally they are completely solid.
Oh, I see. Right. OK. Well, this is the thing, isn't it? I mean, it's a good point to finish on, but there is this question, isn't there, of an inherent belief that if a Labour politician does something, it was a mistake, and their morals and their heart was in the right place. But if a Tory does it, then they must be evil and on the tape. But
it's like Gary Neville has said.
Thank you very much, both of you, as former Conservative MP Andrew Jenkins, and author and journalist as well, Rebecca Reid. All right, look, coming up, English speakers are put behind patients who need an interpreter when waiting for NHS care. What's going on there? Is that a case of Brits at the back of the queue again? And is it any surprise that the Chancellor was booed at her own party conference? Kelvin Mackenzie, he joins me in just a moment. But next, talking to the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves. Well, she's bragged about ending the strikes with pay deals. Exactly when the Royal College of Nursing rejected the government's 5.5% pay offer. So will Labour now regret capitulating to the unions? It's Patrick Christys tonight. We are on GB News.
Thanks for joining me for your latest weather updates from the Met Office here on GB News. It's been another very wet day, but the rain will at least be easing from many areas overnight, and generally a much drier day tomorrow, although there will still be some rain across Scotland. Scotland and Northern Ireland have been largely dry today. It's been across England and Wales where we've had the heavy and persistent rain from this area of low pressure. Still, Met Office yellow weather warning remains in place as that rain does start to ease from central parts, but staying pretty soggy across eastern England well into the night. Drier elsewhere, but we will see some rain just creeping into northern Scotland. Temperatures in Scotland with some clearer skies, dipping to single figures, but most staying in double digits. On to Tuesday, overall a much drier day, particularly where we've seen the heavy and persistent rain today over these central areas. It will be a wetter day, though, in northern Scotland, and with the wind coming in from the northeast, feeling pretty cool as that rain sets in across the Moray Firth in particular. A few scattered showers coming into Northern Ireland during the morning, and the odd one over northern England too, and the remnants of today's rain still clinging to the coasts around East Anglia and Kent. But generally speaking, across England and Wales, a much drier day, thankfully, compared to today. The rain will keep going across northeastern Scotland. If you see a few more showers coming into southeast Scotland and across northern England and North Wales too. Across the Midlands, southern England, quite a bit of cloud, but some bright spells coming through. A bit of sunshine in Northern Ireland is possible also. On the cool side, temperatures struggling up into the low teens across the north, maybe high teens further south. A chilly start to Wednesday, by and large a dry start, but we will see more rain creeping in from the southwest as the day goes on. Some showers in northern Scotland, but many areas dry and bright for much of the morning until this next area of rain comes in, and that is a sign of things to come for much of this week before things then turn colder towards the end of the week.
The Britain I grew up in was the most peaceful, gentle society that has ever existed. That has been destroyed.
Opinion polls show immigration is the #1 concern to the British public.
Are you proud to be British?
Yeah, I'm ever so proud.
My name is Stephen Edgington, and in this documentary, I want to find out how Britain became a nation of immigrants. Immigration, the truth, available at gbnews.com.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss my big opinion. Mark Meets and my take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight. Now, Rachel Reeves got a bit of ahead of herself when she said this today.
Conservatives gave no guidance to the pay review bodies on affordability, nor did they budget for the recommendations they offered. And the Conservatives will deny that this was a choice that had to be made at all. They will claim that it was a viable strategy to let industrial action continue, to let a crisis in recruitment and retention spiral, and let public services deteriorate yet further. That was not a choice I was willing to make, and it was not a choice that was in the national interest either. So I am proud to stand here as the first Chancellor in 14 years to have delivered a meaningful real pay rise to millions of public sector workers.
Unfortunately for the Chancellor, literally while she was saying that, nurses in England said that they'd rejected the government's offer of a 5.5% pay rise. 2/3 of Royal College of Nursing members voted against the deal in a record turnout of 145,000. The RCN's General Secretary says nursing staff are determined to stand up for themselves, their patients and the NHS, whilst pushing for reform. Now, the union's turnout exceeded previous ballots. Look, of course, the point is this, isn't it? Junior doctors were given 22 and a bit % pay rise. Train drivers received almost 15%. Meanwhile, the average salary of a nurse is reported to be somewhere between £37,000 and £42,000 a year. Well, is it right that they should have rejected a 5.5% pay offer? I'm joined yet again by my panel, actually. We've got Emma Webb, we've got Benjamin Butterworth, and we've got former chairman of the Tory party as well, Sir Jake Berry. Jake, do you think they were right to reject this pay offer?
Well, look, I think the government was wrong to give doctors a 22% pay rise and train drivers a 15% pay rise, which is one of the first things they did when they come to power. This is going back to the 1970s. Now, I'm old enough to have been born in that decade, and what happened is every single trade union said, no, if they've had 22% or 15%, we will not settle for less. And that was the insanity, the stupidity of Rachel Reeves coming in, capitulating to all these union demands for their paymasters. Because, of course, every single other trade union is going to say we won't settle for less. And arguably, nurses are probably more deserving, I think lots of people would believe, of a bigger pay rise compared to, say, a train driver.
This is a great point, and Emma, I'll come to you on this. I wonder if there's actually a little bit of classism going on here for the Labour Party, which, of course, they would hate. But they've given in, haven't they, straight away to those junior doctors, many of whom will go on to have lovely middle-class lives, buying their detached houses. Meanwhile, they've stuck the nurses with 5.5% and said, go on, have that.
I mean, you've got to laugh a bit. I mean, the nurses played a blinder with that timing. It's just fantastic. But look, I mean, why would they? Why would they take the 5.5% rise when, like you say, and Jake is absolutely right, when they've seen these huge rises given to the junior doctors who are paid more than they're paid. Nurses, I actually do think, are undervalued, and I think that most people would rather see the nurses get a pay rise than the train drivers, who are already earning far, far above the national average, to be given that 15% pay rise. Very difficult for the Labour government, now that they've created this gold rush, to then justify giving a much lower pay rise to those who are, frankly, at the bottom of the rung when it comes to the NHS hierarchy, especially when you see people in the NHS in bureaucratic roles, diversity and equality and inclusion roles, who are paid astronomical salaries, when those who are actually doing the, and I hate to use the phrase, but the grunt work, those who are really on the front line, the nurses, are earning so much less. I think people will, be disgruntled by that. But, I don't want to see anybody in the NHS striking, because I don't think it's possible to do it without putting patients' lives at risk.
There is that. Now, Benjamin, Wes Streeting had the gall to come out after the Royal College of Nursing said that and said, look, we know how you feel. We know how you feel. But the nurses need to know that they now have a party that cares for them. Well, they don't care for them as much as train drivers or junior doctors, do they?
Well, I think that's a ridiculous comment. I mean,
yeah, you're right. Wes Streeting is completely wrong.
No, I think Patrick...
Oh, sorry.
They're not often confused. I mean, look, the maths of it is the fact that there are very considerably more nurses than there are junior doctors, and so it will cost the state a lot more money to give a considerable pay rise to nurses than it would to doctors. We desperately need junior doctors, and their pay rise, which is less than the pay cut they've had in the last 14 years, is dearly needed. And actually, I think in this negotiation, I can understand why they maybe want more than 5.5%, right? Because inflation has been very high in recent years and their wages have not increased.
Well, they want it because everyone else has got more money. Why would you settle? I wouldn't settle for it. If I saw that my mate had just been given a 22.5% pay rise and my other mate had been given a 15% pay rise, I'm not going to take a 5.5% pay rise.
Well, nurses haven't had the same level of cut to their real terms pay as junior doctors have, so it is relative to the suffering they've had. But can I just say this? It really drives me. It really drives you. It's 3 years of this show. It really drives me mad. The main problem in our economy since 2008 has been stagnant wages. The amount of money people earn, whether private or public sector, has not kept up with the cost of living. And whether it's people on very normal wages like this or low wages, or rich people, I hate the attitude in this country where we resent pay rises.
Rachel Reeves has been mugged off there. The first Labour Party conference in government, the Royal College of Nursing, they'd wait, she's talking, hit her with the no deal.
And so what I really object to is this idea that junior doctors didn't know what their pay was. So they say their pay's been eroded over 15 years. Yes, but they only started their medical course 5 years ago, so they knew what they were signing up to. To say that you want your pay restored to what it was, while these junior doctors were literally 8 years old in school, not even knowing at that point they wanted to become junior doctors, is bizarre. And junior doctors very quickly become senior doctors and earn £100,000 plus a year. That won't happen to nurses. And the Labour Party said, we won't allow people to strike, we'll always give in. So what I say is, more power to the nurses, go on strike, get the pay rise that you need, because it'll bring this Labour government down quicker than it otherwise would be, and it's good for the country.
There you are, a former chair of the Tory party saying he'd rather people go without operations and the government be in chaos for the sake of political posturing. Doesn't that speak volumes about the chaos we had under his government?
All right, go on.
You know what I think speaks volumes? The fact that we saw Dawn Butler earlier. I'm sure many people at home will have seen the video of her talking about Sue Gray being paid so much and the criticisms of her smack of misogyny. But I'd be interested to see whether any of these people who like to talk about misogyny so much within the Labour Party will be pointing out that the nurses are majority female.
There you go. There you go. It's interesting. There's layers and layers to this, isn't there? But look, we know what's coming. There's no way the teachers, I don't think teachers are going to be happy to settle for 5.5% if that's what they're really being offered.
It's a gold rush. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, this is the first of many of these situations. It turns out, doesn't it, maybe, just maybe, being in government is a little bit harder than being in opposition. But thank you again, panel. I'll be seeing you in about, 15 minutes' time. But coming up, our embattled Prime Minister, he faces his party conference in the thick of DonorGate, and the revelations just keep on coming. Maybe we found out what Lord Ali has got for his money, and we'll be talking about that at 10 p.m. But next, English speakers, well, apparently they're being put behind patients who need an interpreter when they're waiting for NHS care. What's going on there? And is it any surprise that the Labour bigwigs were booed at their own conference over their treatment of the pensioners this winter? Easy for me to say. I'll see you in a sec.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Good morning, everybody. I honestly think Gen Z are as lazy as we've been made out. I was on GB News a couple of months ago talking about a report which suggested that they were very lazy, very work shy, and I honestly don't think that's the case. I respect my elders, so I'm certainly not going to sit here and blame them for the slow return to many offices across the country. But I am actually 20. I've run businesses since I was 15 and 16, since I dropped out of school, and I have always been pro-office, right? So I fit right into that Generation Z category, and I think the office environment is fantastic, not just professionally but socially for young people, especially kind of after COVID, and it halted a lot of their social plans or people going to university, etc. I think getting people into the office, being surrounded by the more senior people, the people with more experience, which is what we're talking about, older people, is actually incredibly positive. But I think Generation Z get a lot of stick in the media, and I'm often sat here debating this about them being called lazy. I guess I think probably what's different is technology is advanced, so people's jobs are a lot quicker, and Generation Z have obviously grew up with that technology, therefore in a position to do jobs quicker. And I guess that's kind of where that kind of narrative has come from, because Gen Z do really kind of go with the whole work smarter, not harder kind of mentality, which is often met with a little bit of stick.
I'm not knocking the young generation at all. I mean, I'm just saying it's by experience. Undoubtedly, they're not as hard-working as the more experienced worker, but I'm certainly not knocking them on that basis. If they had the opportunity, I'm sure there'd be more and more would want to get into the workplace. But unfortunately, I think this COVID has changed the world, and it's made younger people more lazy than older people. Older people just can't wait to, well, shouldn't say that, can't wait to get out of the house to get to work.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight. Now, if you're wanting to use the NHS and you happen to be English and English is your native language, then expect to be thrust to the back of the queue, apparently. Patients in waiting rooms at Imperial College Healthcare NHS Trust hospitals are having to witness those who require translators skip the queue in front of them. It is a shocking allegation. Tory leadership hopeful Robert Jenrick, he hit out at this approach. He basically said Brits are already waiting too long for treatment. And to paraphrase him, he said that they should not be suffering again as a result of mass migration. There's also an argument for a lack of integration, isn't there? Joining me now is former editor of The Sun, Kelvin Mackenzie. Kelvin, is this a straightforward case of Brits being back of the queue?
Yes, it is, and it's an absolute disgrace. And the reason for it is that they hire these interpreters at these hospitals for a set number of hours, and therefore what they want to do is they will prioritise the of colour community or the migrant community, because otherwise they would have these interpreters hanging around all day. Well, I say that actually the cost will be worth it to make clear to the English patients that they are important. After all, how are we to know until the doctors see them that the English patients haven't got a bigger problem than the migrant patients? But actually in London, this is part of a much bigger issue. So I walked up from Seven Sisters Tube to Tottenham on Saturday, a 25-minute walk, and actually outside the football fans, the colour of London is changing. And if you go to, well, I went to a restaurant on Thursday night, and myself and the couple we were with, we were basically the only white people in the restaurant. London is in full-scale change, mainly because it generates money, therefore there are jobs, and therefore the migrant community from wherever they come from are coming into London to take work. So it's no surprise that in hospitals, the doctors and the nurses, and actually through the interpreters, are actually getting priority. There's more of them, and they're likely to be sicker as well. After all, they come from backgrounds where there aren't any, a lot of there isn't the natural.
I think there's a difference. I think there's a difference, isn't there, between people who might not be like say white, but also people who then just can't speak English. And it's the important bit here, which is about the idea that we clearly have a huge number of people, it seems, who are unable to speak English. Now, fine. Look, hey, if I got ill abroad, in France or Spain or Germany, I would not be able to speak that language, and so therefore I'd be relying on them to talk English to me.
Yeah, you
or I
wouldn't
would
get
need
priority.
Fine.
You wouldn't get priority.
But I would not expect priority. The other aspect of this is actually if it is people who are living over here, or indeed potentially in some cases were born here or have spent decades here and still can't speak the language. That is a problem, and it is a question of priorities, isn't it? I think those priorities might be wrong.
Well, you go into East London, Patrick, and the signs there are in other languages. So this can't come as a surprise. It's part of the changing shape of our nation, and it's one that Jenrick has cottoned on to. Nigel Farage has been talking about it. Even Kemi has a view about it. So we do have politicians who do understand it's a problem. It doesn't seem to be a problem, though, to the current Labour administration, who would say, I can't see what your issue is. The issue is, if we're going to do this, we should not prioritise one set of people over another. We should treat them, what is wrong with you? You're serious, we'll treat you first. If it happens to be somebody who can't speak the language, fine. But if it's somebody who can speak the language, they should get it. It's completely, utterly wrong. And it's these kinds of stories and these kinds of discussions on television which create a lot of unease in our communities.
And it kind of needs to be had, though, right? Because if it wasn't, then you wouldn't really notice it, and you wouldn't necessarily, it wouldn't be brought to your attention, and you might just be thinking, or they might call you a bit mad if you were in that room and you saw it happening around you, and you're like, well, hang on a minute, is this really happening? And when you consider the sheer amount of waste in other aspects of the NHS, the idea they've decided to penny pinch by allowing people who don't speak English to skip the queue, I think that's
the best part of these kind. Actually, this was in the mainstream media. I think it was either Mail on Sunday or somebody, which is good because normally these kinds of anecdotes or kinds of stories no longer get carried. And the reason they don't get carried because an advertiser, a media buyer says, we don't want our adverts to be alongside this kind of story. So there is a massive problem about actually getting these kinds of stories out there. So I'm very grateful for the Mail on Sunday.
All right, Kelvin, look, thank you very much for your time. As ever, as former editor of The Sun there, Kelvin Mackenzie. We've got a spokesperson here for Imperial College Healthcare NHS Trust saying patients are seen in our clinics according to clinical need, which may sometimes mean that patients who come to the clinic later are seen before patients who have been waiting for longer. We are committed to responding to the specific needs raised by any of our patients, and every patient has the right to use a professional interpreter. Right, look, we've got loads more coming your way, including, have we finally found out what mega bucks Labour donor Lord Ali really got for his money? Stay tuned.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Thanks for joining me for your latest weather updates from the Met Office here on GB News. It's been another very wet day, but the rain will at least be easing from many areas overnight, and generally a much drier day tomorrow, although there will still be some rain across Scotland. Scotland and Northern Ireland have been largely dry today. It's been across England and Wales where we've had the heavy and persistent rain from this area of low pressure. Still, Met Office yellow weather warning remains in place as that rain does start to ease from central parts, but staying pretty soggy across eastern England well into the night. Drier elsewhere, but we will see some rain just creeping into northern Scotland. Temperatures in Scotland with some clearer skies dipping to single figures, but most staying in double digits. On to Tuesday, overall a much drier day, particularly where we've seen the heavy and persistent rain today over these central areas. It will be a wetter day though in northern Scotland, and with the wind coming in from the northeast, feeling pretty cool as that rain sets in across the Moray Firth in particular. A few scattered showers coming into Northern Ireland during the morning, and the odd one over northern England too, and the remnants of today's rain still clinging to the coasts around East Anglia and Kent. But generally speaking, across England and Wales, a much drier day, thankfully, compared to today. The rain will keep going across northeastern Scotland. If you see a few more showers coming into southeast Scotland and across northern England and North Wales too. Across the Midlands, southern England, quite a bit of cloud, but some bright spells coming through. A bit of sunshine in Northern Ireland is possible also. On the cool side, temperatures struggling up into the low teens across the north, maybe high teens further south. A chilly start to Wednesday, by and large a dry start, but we will see more rain creeping in from the southwest as the day goes on. Some showers in northern Scotland, but many areas dry and bright for much of the morning until this next area of rain comes in, and that is a sign of things to come for much of this week before things then turn colder towards the end of the week.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
There's an incredible good luck.
The Britain I grew up was the most peaceful, gentle society that has ever existed. That has been destroyed.
Opinion polls show immigration is the #1 concern to the British public.
Are you proud to be British?
Yeah, I'm ever so proud.
My name is Stephen Edgington, and in this documentary, I want to find out how Britain became a nation of immigrants. Immigration, the truth, available at gbnews.com.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
It's 10 p.m. I'm Patrick Christys. Tonight.
Absolutely incredible that this level of attention is now being paid to a Labour Prime Minister.
Left whinger Gary Neville tries to defend his Labour mates.
Corruption, and that is the word, is happening in plain sight.
But now Angela Rayner bills the taxpayer about 68 grand for a vanity photographer, apparently, and a new theory has emerged about what mega bucks freebie giver Lord Ali might have got for his money.
We are still selling arms to Israel. I thought we were voting for change, Rachel.
Well, it's no wonder that Labour's getting heckled at their own conference, is it? Also tonight...
I am proud to stand here as the first Chancellor in 14 years to have delivered a meaningful real pay rise to millions of public sector workers. It was the right choice for parents, patients and for the British public, the right choice for recruitment and retention, and it was the right choice for our country.
Well, as she said that, Rachel Reeves was confronted by the nurses rejecting a 5.5% pay rise, plus...
I have to be honest with you, I was quite disappointed with the number of people that took action in the last election.
I'll show you leaked footage of a Just Stop Oil activist moaning about how unpopular they now are, and...
The National Trust not only seeks to protect nature, but also England's historical identity.
This story landed just moments ago. 70% of National Trust staff are Union Jack-hating progressive activists, apparently. We reveal all at 10:30 and... Women's rights campaigner Kellie-Jay Keen is attacked in the street by a man. Also tonight, as Starmer gets a new kitten, can you name this back catalogue of political pets? All right, OK, I will also be joined, of course, by my wonderful panel. Tonight, it is broadcaster Emma Webb, journalist Benjamin Butterworth, and we're also joined by the former chairman of the Tory party, Sir Jake Berry. Get ready, Britain, here we go. How long before Labour MPs are billing the taxpayer for Botox and facelifts? Next.
Good evening, I'm Sophia Wenslow with your headlines just after 10 o'clock. Rachel Reeves has accused the last Conservative government of choking off investment and suffocating growth and living standards in her speech at Labour's conference in Liverpool today, but not before she faced a protester.
We are still selling arms to Israel.
Yes, thank you. He accused Labour of selling arms to Israel before being removed, with shouts of Free Palestine heard from backstage. Getting back on track, the Chancellor declared Labour is a party that represents working people, not a party of protest, earning her a standing ovation. She went on to promise to repay the trust of voters and set out what her first budget on the 30th of October will focus on.
So it will be a budget with real ambition, a budget to fix the foundations, a budget to deliver the change that we promised, a budget to rebuild Britain. And my budget will keep our manifesto commitments. Every choice we make will be within a framework of economic and fiscal stability. You'd expect nothing less. We said we would not increase taxes on working people, which is why we will not increase the basic, higher or additional rates of income tax, national insurance or VAT. And we will cap corporation tax at its current level for the duration of this Parliament.
Now to the Middle East, where 492 people have been killed and more than 1,000 left wounded in the most widespread wave of Israeli airstrikes against Hezbollah in the last year. Residents in southern Lebanon reported receiving calls this morning telling them to evacuate, with warnings also broadcast across Lebanese media. Meanwhile, Israel's Prime Minister has sent a message to the Lebanese people saying his country's war is not with you, it's with Hezbollah. And back in the UK, a mother and daughter have been jailed for more than 3 years in total for taking part in a riot while out walking the family dog. 52-year-old Amanda Walton and 24-year-old Megan Davison admitted violent disorder during disturbances in Middlesbrough on the 4th of August. Video played in court showed Davison jumping on the roof of a red car while Walton was seen throwing something. The judge jailed Walton for 22 months and her daughter Davison for 20 months. Now, some breaking news in the last hour. A 40-year-old woman and an 8-year-old girl have been found dead at a home in Greater Manchester. Police said they were investigating the circumstances after the two bodies were found at an address in Salford. Police added they are not actively looking for anyone else in relation to the investigation. And nurses in England have rejected the government's offer of a 5.5% pay rise. 2/3 of Royal College of Nursing members voted against the deal in a record turnout of 145,000. The pay award was announced in July, shortly after Labour's general election win. The RCN's General Secretary says nursing staff are determined to stand up for themselves, their patients and the NHS while pushing for reforms. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. Now it's back to Patrick.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Every single day, the Labour Party's DonorGate gets worse. But we might finally have the answer as to what mega bucks Labour gift giver Lord Ali got for his money. It's been revealed that a top figure who selected Labour candidates at the last election was a man called Matt Fielding, and he was working on secondment at Lord Ali's office before the election. So the link between Lord Ali and Fielding Raises questions, doesn't it, over whether Lord Ali had influence over which Labour MPs were selected, and which may be in a position now where many new Labour MPs think they owed their jobs to him. He was then given a pass to Downing Street and reportedly allowed to sit in on meetings. Now, we have put this to Lord Ali, and we are yet to hear back from him. If true, it would also leave our Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, with egg on her face for comments like this.
We are also making sure we're getting a grip of cronyism, because I think what really grates is that people donate and then they get something in return. And what we saw during the pandemic was people who had donated to the Conservative Party then getting government contracts, government money for things like PPE.
Well, we can tell that Labour are massively rattled by DonorGate because they're now even throwing their own children under the bus when it comes to their freebies.
I'll be honest, it was a hard one to turn down. I appreciate there was big demand for the tickets. It was a privilege to be there. One of my children, you know, was keen to go along. It's hard to say no if you're offered tickets in those circumstances.
My declarations, you'll see, I don't think I've accepted very much at all. I did take my children to see Taylor Swift, which was more for them than it was for me.
So West Streeting is trying to claim that gifts like Taylor Swift tickets are just the same as giving to charity.
I'm really proud of people who want to contribute not just their time and volunteering, but their money to our politics. It is a noble pursuit, just like giving to charity.
I know that Keir Starmer's tanking in the polls. He's now more unpopular than Rishi Sunak was. But I think it's a bit harsh to call him a charity case, isn't it? Angela Rayner, well, she's had clothes, she's had a New York apartment, and now she's after 68 grand from the taxpayer for a vanity photographer to make her look better, reportedly. What next? Labour MPs invoicing the taxpayer for Botox and teeth whitening to make them look better? If only there was a tweet, showing that she's a hypocrite. Oh, actually, yeah, there it is. She thinks that Boris should have prioritised feeding children. Many people think that she should prioritise feeding pensioners and keeping them warm this winter. Keir Starmer's even wheeled out left-winger Gary Neville to do a bit of rearguard action.
Absolutely incredible that this level of attention is now being paid to a Labour Prime Minister. When I look at the absolute cronyism that we watched for years, under that, it was just let go.
Well, hang on a minute, Gary, because Labour's largest donor at the last election was a Cayman Islands-based hedge fund that apparently invests in arms manufacturing, private healthcare and fossil fuels, a fact which was only revealed last week. That would be almost as hypocritical as, look, hey, I don't know, taking money for helping to promote the Qatar World Cup. Labour are on the rack here, OK? And these are the important questions for me now. Did Lord Ali have influence over Labour candidates being selected at the last election, and did he get a Downing Street pass for his money? Was Keir Starmer complicit in that? What has that Cayman Islands-based hedge fund got for their money? Those are the more serious things, but on a more personal level, what does it say that Labour MPs are content to throw their own kids under the bus to defend a freebie? And how do you feel about paying for a photographer to make Angela Rayner look better? Well, there may well be a big scandal here. At the very least, there appears to be massive hypocrisy. Let's get thoughts from my panel. We've got political commentator and broadcaster Emma Webb. We've got journalist and commentator Benjamin Butterworth and the former chairman of the Tory party, Sir Jake. Oh, gosh, there goes my earpiece. Sorry about that. Jake, I'll start with you on this one, because you have some personal experience of being actually inside and around Downing Street. When it comes to Lord Ali, OK, do you think that maybe there is an implication that he's had some kind of say over who's been selected to be Labour MPs? Is that what he's got for his money?
Well, clearly someone who works for him has been in a very important role of selecting Labour MPs just before a general election. And let's just put this into context. What happens if a surprise general election's called, as it was, suddenly lots of safe seats become available either in the Conservative Party or the Labour Party, and the person who basically picks the candidate to go into those safe seats is very, very powerful. And we learned today that that was someone on secondment, I believe, from Lord Ali's office. It certainly looks bad. He's obviously a very, very influential person within the Labour Party. Not only does he now have Keir Starmer, Angela Rayner, lots of people in the cabinet who have been the beneficiary of the largesse from his giving, but also now probably dozens of newly elected Labour MPs, probably in some of their safer seats. These people will be in Parliament for decades, who probably owe him one. It's very, very
I mean,
fishy.
this looks awful, Benjamin, doesn't it? It looks absolutely awful. It looks as though, and again, you know, we've reached out to Lord Ali for comment on this, and I imagine that he would vociferously deny this. He's yet to get back to us. But, you know, it's easy to pose the question, isn't it, really, that did he give a load of money to a variety of different people, and then was he in a position to be able to select which candidates he wanted? Those people might owe him something. Is that maybe where all the money's gone, for that level of influence?
No. I mean, look, I have to declare my interest that I know all the people involved in your monologue and have done for some time. And the idea that what you described is what's going on is incredibly insulting. What you've got here are people that saw the useless mess that the Labour Party under Jeremy Corbyn was, that it wasn't helping any of the people that they went into politics for, that it was losing elections, that the country was being run into the ground, and they worked, whether with the finance of Lord Ali, who has funded both Labour and other causes for a very long time. He was appointed to the House of Lords in the 1990s, and they have worked meticulously to throw out the hard left that did nothing for the Labour Party and nothing for this country, and get sensible, capable people selected as Labour
MPs. Who they've chosen.
Sorry, you might have chosen them then, you think?
I did not say that in any way.
Just to clarify, Benjamin, on something really important here. So you started that by saying that you appear to know everyone that was named in that monologue there. So you know Lord Ali?
I've met him many times and interviewed him, yeah.
Right, OK. And then you followed that up by saying that his main desire was to try to get more...
No. I was talking about...
So the
that's not what I said.
He gave money and then he helped get the candidates that he wanted in. And some people would argue...
That's not what I said. That's not what I said. I said these people in organisation within the Labour Party have worked to get rid of the hard left. Right. And they did that because they wanted Labour to be able to do its job as a functioning political party.
How did he get the influence to be in that position out of interest, Benjamin? Was it a load of money?
It wasn't Lord Ali that was doing that. He wasn't selecting people.
But the fact is that all
political parties need to be funded by private donors. That's the system we have. And it is completely wrong to suggest these people were doing it for some kind of favour. They were doing it because the Labour Party was useless and had to get sensible people in. And there was a massive
I've been chairman of a political party. There is nothing more sensitive than who are selecting your candidates. No other political party I'm aware of has put a donor in the position of sending someone over from his office. Who knows whether on instruction from him? I simply don't know. But no other political party has basically said to someone from a donor's office, you choose the next generation of MPs. That is not normal. That is not part of the normal political to and fro in this country. It is very, very odd.
Your view on this?
That's not what happened.
I just think...
Well, it is what happened.
It's not. Matt Fording worked for the Labour Party for many years.
He was on secondment.
Let him talk.
He's a terrible misogynist, Benjamin, not letting me get a word in. I'm only joking. Now, don't get upset.
I'm not saying anything, so you speak.
I just think it's extraordinary. I mean, it's incredible. They try to pitch themselves as being the party of ethics and propriety, and now they're saying, well, you know, we didn't break the rules. Well, I mean, maybe you should have higher standards than just simply abiding by the rules. If those are what the rules are, then perhaps you should be criticising what the rules are within our political system, and maybe do something to change that. Unless you, of course, want to make the argument that it is appropriate to do all of these things. And the thing is that, you know, ultimately they're getting a taste of their own medicine. They would have done exactly the same with the Conservative Party, and they did. And now they're having... and Gary Neville is completely wrong, because the level of scrutiny on the previous government was sort of off the charts. It was never ending. It was every single week after week after week there was something else. And now we're seeing that happen within the Labour Party because of a political culture that they created that leads to this kind of scrutiny, and scrutiny isn't a bad thing. But the way that they're reacting to it isn't principled. It's just, well, oh, those are the rules. And they're not holding themselves to the same standards that they would hold a Conservative government to. And I think the British public can see not only that that's ridiculous, but also that that's laughable, because people don't have such a short memory that they can't remember the sorts of principles that they profess to be campaigning on.
Yeah, it's this business of what did people get for their money. And people have been scratching their heads about this, and Lord Ali may well deny that he's had any influence. I imagine that he will deny it. Benjamin, you're very strong on the idea that he hasn't, and I don't want to go...
Yeah, you can't seem to understand, and I get this, because after years of Tories who've handed out public money to donors, the cash for contracts during COVID was obscene.
Well, why did he get Downing Street pass, Benjamin?
Because he's been a Labour advisor for years, and he's a Labour member of the House of Lords.
Well, why did they retract it the second that it was scrutiny on it?
Well, because they thought it was a bad look, and they didn't want it to be perceived in the way that people like you are trying to perceive it.
But it's not just...
This Labour government...
That we've had years of cronyism. You can't understand. There are some people that care about this country, that care about the cause of the Labour Party, and if money is the way they can help, then they're doing it. But it doesn't mean they're getting special deals.
Cash for cronies, isn't it? This Labour government, 11 weeks in, is dripping with sleaze and freebies. The British public can see it. They are literally... even on their own figures, 4,000 pensioners could potentially die this year because they're taking a winter fuel payment. At the same time, it may or not be correct. It's a Labour press release, so it probably is nonsense, but it is their own press release.
Benjamin doesn't like
But in the same time that they're taking Taylor Swift tickets and going, it's OK because my kids wanted them. I thought the grown-ups were in charge. Apparently it's the children now of Labour ministers who decide what donations they take. This is sleazy beyond belief, and the British public can see...
Tory MPs with the exact same events.
I'm going to bring everything in now. How pathetic is it to see two high-flying Labour MPs, their ministers, throwing their own children under the bus because they went to a Taylor Swift concert? It's pathetic.
What kind of parent would do that? Would say, my child really wanted to go, so I felt that I was just compelled, I had to take the tickets, because otherwise, there would have been trouble at home. Your children would have had a strop that you weren't allowed to go, rather than maybe you using it as an exercise in explaining to your children the principles of the politics that you might wish that we had, which is where we don't take these sorts of free gifts and fill our boots when we have the opportunity to. Now, I'm not actually criticising them for taking those tickets, or even if they declare the gifts, fine. But the point is hypocrisy, because they would criticise the Conservatives for this. And to Benjamin's point, it's not that he's a Labour peer and has been an advisor for many, many years. It's also that he's a donor, and that means it's compromising.
So to clarify, if you are a donor to a party, you only have an ulterior motive.
No, I'm saying that you have to have certain,
what about
certain
the Cayman
ethics around
Islands-based
that.
hedge fund? They're notoriously altruistic, are they?
Well, the fact is that if you think that these various companies...
Don't worry, Rachel Reeves is going to clamp down on tax avoidance.
They've got love in their hearts. That Cayman Island-based hedge fund gave the Labour Party £4 million just out of the... They thought, you know what, of all that we do like dabbling in a bit of arms manufacturing, we like private healthcare, we like fossil fuels, but this £4 million we'll just give out the goodness of our hearts to the Labour Party, like, as Wes Streeting would say, a charity.
But hang on, you talk about all those things, and yet Labour's already announced that it's not having new oil drilling licences, so clearly that money isn't buying influence. Now, obviously, there are organisations and funds that do give money because they want to be in a good place with the government. That has always been the case, OK? And that's certainly not what happens with Lord Ali. But clearly there are outlets that do it in order to get in bed with the government.
Clear it all up, then?
And that is...
Hang on a minute. Lord Ali has been the centre of a storm now for the best part of 2 weeks. Why doesn't he just come out and talk about it? Why doesn't he just come out,
let me tell
an
you.
interview and put the whole thing to bed?
Because he never gives interviews. I've interviewed him, and it was extremely rare. He doesn't like to...
So he does give interviews?
Why
don't you interview him? We can clear it up straight away.
He's done about 2 interviews in 10 years. The man is very private. He cares about the Labour Party and a sensible government. And it is...
But he might have had a say over who was selected.
No, I did not say that at any point.
He might have done.
I said that the fact is we have a system of politics where you have private people funding political parties. Now, everything you say, the only logical conclusion is that you think the state should fund them if you don't think private individuals or companies should.
Do you know what? With this Labour Party, Angela Rayner's taxpayer-funded photographer points the camera at the cabinet, say sleaze. That's what it's all about.
All right,
boom.
Well, look, hey, there we go. Well, look, it's a strong start to the hour. Like I've said, Lord Ali's not here to defend himself. There is, as it stands, absolutely no indication of wrongdoing whatsoever. There are simply a series of questions that I think are, willing to be posed, right? And that's all that we are doing. We have reached out to him for comment, and that, as they say, is that. Coming up at 10:30, me and my press pack bring you the very first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages with full analysis. Plus, National Trust bosses apparently have said that 70% of their staff are progressive activists, and less than a quarter are proud of their country. Can these people be trusted to preserve our nation's heritage? But up next, I'll show you a leaked video from a Just Stop Oil meeting with activists complaining that they aren't popular and that they didn't go far enough. When will they learn? Stay tuned.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Many happy memories, and 9 in 10 Brits say certain foods evoke feelings of childhood nostalgia, with the mousse-like powdered dessert, Angel Delight, the most loved. Joining us now...
By that.
Yeah, what, Angel Delight?
I'm surprised it's number one. Yes, very surprised. Well, to talk us through all of this is creator of the Crazy Sexy Food podcast, Hannah Harley-Young. Morning.
Hi. I've brought a selection of things that really define my childhood, particularly the Viennetta ice cream. And I have brought you some butterscotch Angel Delight.
Yay!
I'm going to expose myself live on camera and say that I've never tried Angel Delight.
Hannah?
I know. I don't know what that says about me.
I thought that was apple puree, actually. I'm so excited. Is it good?
Oh, my goodness.
Did I make it okay?
Oh, yeah. But to be fair, Hannah, it's not that hard to make.
Well, what is it, though? That's what's so funny about Angel Delight.
It's chemicals. It's just chemicals in a bag.
I mean, it's a load of additives, which, I mean, one thing that's also really interesting about all these nostalgic foods when you look at them is that a lot of things have been discontinued over the years.
Oh, dear.
So it makes you wonder, how did this one kind of get through the cracks?
Angel Delight came out number one, didn't it?
It did come out as number one. And also sort of in the top 5 was fish and chips, something I still eat today. Fish fingers, still a staple of my diet. Mr. Whippy, in that same survey, they said that 95% of people find that a taste from their childhood will take them back more than looking at a photo. And that's something that's really interesting for me, and it's the basis of everything that I do, and the reason really why I set up Crazy Sexy Food, or one of the reasons, should I say, was that I love this concept of memories of food. You know, I've interviewed hundreds of people over the past 5 years, and when I get to that question, you actually see their face relaxing, and there's something that it evokes emotion.
GB News, the People's Channel. Weekdays on GB News. Wake up to breakfast every day from 6 a.m. Followed by Britain's newsroom at 9:30. At noon, it's Good Afternoon Britain. Followed by Martin Daubney from 3 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, welcome back. Now, a leaked clip of a meeting between Just Stop Oil activists shows eco-warriors complaining that their fellow greenies hadn't put enough effort in to disruptive activities in the last, quote, phase of their campaigning. So we've got this video and audio for you now, so let's take a little look and a listen.
Do have some agency, but they know if they take action, it will lead to them being disappeared or shot or killed in some other interesting way. I have to be honest with you, I was quite disappointed with the number of people that took action in the last action phase, and I understand there are very many reasons for that, but I've had to process my own negative emotions in relation to what happened, because I know that our superpower is numbers. We live in a repressive environment at the moment, but as ordinary people we have power in collective action. We have power in numbers. That's where our power lies.
So this apparently insufficient activity led to 5 of their activists actually getting jail time at the time, with their founder, Roger Hallam, getting 5 years behind bars. That was after a massive blockade of the M25, caused 51,000 hours of driver delays over 4 days. So why on earth do these eco-zealots not realise that actions do have consequences? But I'm very grateful, actually, to be joined now by environmental lawyer and campaigner for Defend Our Juries, is Tim Crossland. Tim, look, thank you very much for coming on. Great to have you on the show. Look, first things first, then, just at the start of what that lady said, which, look, unless I've misheard this, it appeared to say that activists, just up all activists, risk being disappeared or shot if they take part in campaigning. Is that the kind of, I suppose, conspiracy theory that's being pumped out to people?
I think that's true about what happens around the world. I don't think that's true about what happens in this country. But certainly we've got a lot of evidence of activists opposing oil interests in various parts of the world who are shot every year. There's a NGO, Global Witness, who tracks the numbers, and it's hundreds of activists who are killed around the world. So I assume that's what the
I just wondered, Tim, whether or not that plays into the psychology of it, though, really, because if people genuinely believe that what they are doing is a matter of life and death here, and that they are running the risk of being shot or the government making them disappear if they spray a bit of orange paint over something, then that maybe feeds into a sense of narcissism that we see from some of these people.
Well, as I say, I think that was a comment about people around the world rather than in the UK. It is true that in the last couple of months, dozens and dozens of British activists have been jailed for taking peaceful action. And you will have seen as well, at the same time, we've had people released early from jail, having committed violent and sexual offences, who then recommit offences the same day. So that is certainly true. I mean, I don't know. I can't speak for what someone else was referring to. There are lots of people who've been jailed in the last 2 months in this country.
Yes. Just on the idea there that she seemed to be expressing a bit of disappointment for a poor turnout, as it were. Does that maybe indicate that actually support is waning for the things that Just Stop Oil do, that people maybe see them now as a bit more of an annoyance than anything else?
I think the movement constantly changes shape and it constantly evolves. And of course, I mean, there are a lot of people who are nervous now about what you can do in this country without going to jail. We've had people jailed just for walking along Whitehall for 15 minutes. Someone called Stephen Gingle was jailed for 6 months after 15 minutes of a walk along Whitehall. So I think maybe that does have an impact. And we then need to think about what kind of country we're creating if people are afraid to challenge alternative views.
Yeah, I mean, look, obviously it's not just walking, is it, at times? We've seen quite a lot of stuff going on where they've, either committed criminal damage or potentially as well got in the way of people getting hospital appointments, etc. I'm actually quite intrigued. I absolutely do not want to refer, as I'm sure neither do you, to any active ongoing court cases at the moment in time. However, I am intrigued by a general defence. And I would quite like your legal mind on this, because is it right that some of the people try to claim that they are not guilty on the grounds of the fact that the world is going to end as a result of climate change, and that they need to be doing the kind of actions that they are doing now by doing things like gluing themselves to something?
Oh, for sure, yes. I mean, that has traditionally been a defence in all kinds of things, where you say you're trying to do one thing to stop a greater harm. So just to take a basic legal defence, somebody breaks a car window in a car park, and the first thing you might imagine is they're committing a crime. And then it turns out they're breaking the window because the windows were fully rolled up and it was a hot day and there was a child in the car, or there was a dog in the car, and they're breaking the window to save the dog or the child. Well, that's a defence in law.
And does that work for these? Because that. Look, hey, this stuff goes to a jury or it goes to a judge, depending on what court it's in, and that's for them to make their minds up about, and that's the legal system that we've got. But I think a lot of people might be quite concerned at that, because if that is the case, that could be quite a slippery slope. That anybody who feels justified enough in whatever cause that may be. Now, that might be something absolutely heinous. It might be something absolutely horrendous. It might be something like, Angus Breivik or whatever he was called, that Norwegian guy that killed a load of people. He obviously had his own cause, right? A completely warped cause in his mind. But, could someone like him try and argue that defence that these eco-lot use, which is that we were doing this because we are trying to prevent a greater harm to humanity?
Well, in my opinion, he wouldn't get very far if he did, because we've got a system in this country, trial by jury, that brings the moral common sense of ordinary people into the courtroom. And I believe in the common sense of ordinary people. In particular, you bring people together and put them into a situation where everybody brings their different experience.
Right.
And knowledge of the world. I don't think that defence would get very far.
So if you conceivably, if you had a jury of very environmentally minded people, and you offered up that defence, which is that we, brought a private jet to a halt at Heathrow Airport or did something else on the grounds of the fact that we think the world's going to incinerate itself, then you reckon there's quite a good chance that those people would be found not guilty. But if people committed the same crime, but they happen to have a jury of people who don't think the world's going to end because of climate change, that they probably would be found guilty. Is that not a bit of a problem, do you think? Because it's not really the same, doesn't really seem like it's equality before the law then.
It's not about reckoning, it's about the evidence, because we've had a lot of these trials now, so we can actually look and see what happens. And when people have been able to put the science in front of a jury, and a jury is randomly selected, it's almost like a perfect little oasis of democracy, because it's totally random. So you're not going to get 12 members of the Green Party on a jury, just as you're not going to get 12 members of Reform on a jury. You're going to get a mix, because it's random selection. And when those juries have been allowed to see evidence of the science and what the scientists have predicted for decades and decades, and when they've seen the evidence of the cover-up by oil corporations and the very deliberate attempts to conceal that evidence from the public over many decades, hiring the same PR companies that the tobacco industry hired to cast doubt on the link between tobacco and lung cancer, and they've seen that the government has failed to listen to the science and has in fact acted on the lobbyists, those juries have often broken down in tears to see what has been happening in this country, and that's led to not guilty verdicts. What has since happened, and I think this is a bit of a scandal, is lobbyists for the oil and arms industry have been in touch with government ministers, and those defences have been removed. And now juries are not allowed to hear that evidence, and now we're starting to get guilty verdicts.
I think that's really fascinating. That is a really fascinating insight, right? One I've been hoping to give to our viewers and listeners for quite a good time now about what kind of goes on in these courtrooms, because then it doesn't necessarily become a question of criminal damage or not. It becomes a question of which science do you believe or what do you believe, etc. But look, thank you very much. We are out of time, I'm afraid, but I did thoroughly enjoy that conversation. That is Tim Crossland there, who's a campaigner for Defend Our Juries and environmental lawyer as well. Right, coming up, National Trust bosses say that 70% of their staff are, quote, progressive activists, and less than a quarter are proud of their country. Can these people be trusted to preserve our nation's heritage? But next, yes, myself and my press pack, we will pick you through the very first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages. Stay tuned.
Thanks for joining me for your latest weather updates from the Met Office here on GB News. It's been another very wet day, but the rain will at least be easing from many areas overnight, and generally a much drier day tomorrow, although there will still be some rain across Scotland. Scotland and Northern Ireland have been largely dry today. It's been across England and Wales where we've had the heavy and persistent rain from this area of low pressure. Still, Met Office yellow weather warning remains in place as that rain does start to ease from central parts, but staying pretty soggy across eastern England well into the night. Drier elsewhere, but we will see some rain just creeping into northern Scotland. Temperatures in Scotland with some clearer skies, dipping to single figures, but most staying in double digits. On to Tuesday, overall a much drier day, particularly where we've seen the heavy and persistent rain today over these central areas. It will be a wetter day though in northern Scotland, and with the wind coming in from the northeast, feeling pretty cool as that rain sets in across the Moray Firth in particular. A few scattered showers coming into Northern Ireland during the morning, and the odd one over northern England too, and the remnants of today's rain still clinging to the coasts around East Anglia and Kent. But generally speaking, across England and Wales, a much, much drier day, thankfully, compared to today. The rain will keep going across northeastern Scotland. If you see a few more showers coming into southeast Scotland and across northern England and North Wales too. Across the Midlands, southern England, quite a bit of cloud, but some bright spells coming through. A bit of sunshine in Northern Ireland is possible also. On the cool side, temperatures struggling up into the low teens across the north, maybe high teens further south. A chilly start to Wednesday, by and large a dry start, but we will see more rain creeping in from the southwest as the day goes on. Some showers in northern Scotland, but many areas dry and bright for much of the morning until this next area of rain comes in, and that is a sign of things to come for much of this week before things then turn colder towards the end of the week.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
The king of breakfast TV is back. That's right, Britain's favourite TV host, Eamon Holmes, returns to Britain's hottest breakfast programme. Breakfast every day from 6 a.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Emily Carver. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
All right, welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight, and I've got the very first look at tomorrow's front pages now, so let's do it. So we're going to start us off tonight with the Daily Mail. Union boss, we will seize control of the UK economy. It's a chilling threat, this, from the RMT's militant leader, Mick Lynch. He said that union barons are going to seize control of the economy now that their friends are in power. The UK's economy is at the mercy of the trade unions, supposedly. So that's quite a big one, that, from the Mail. Let's go to the Eye. Reeves looks at cutting benefits to fund public spending boost. Chancellor Rachel Reeves is considering cutting cuts to welfare spending in order to allocate more for long-term investment as she prepares to draw up a money-saving budget. If we whiz ourselves over to The Guardian, the Prime Minister has vowed to end the gloom as Labour seeks to lift spending restrictions. Keir Starmer will cast off the gloom that has dominated his early days in power and build a new Britain, apparently. Apparently he's going to tweak the fiscal rules to allow more capital spending. There we go. The Times has got Labour to crack down on benefits fraudsters. Starmer's new law will let investigators access suspects' bank details and seize property. I mean, it's quite interesting, this, isn't it? Because this is conceivably, on paper at least, a very big crackdown, the likes of which that the Tories would have been called the nasty party for doing. But apparently he's announcing plans to root out benefit fraudsters by giving investigators new powers. I mean, look, I'm here for that. If they do that, then fantastic. Maybe we can let the pensioners off. The Daily Telegraph. Light at the end of the tunnel, the Prime Minister tells Britain tax rises and short-term pain are the only way to achieve prosperity. He says there is also a picture there of Labour's £1 million donor breaking cover. Lord Ali there, apparently at the Labour conference in Liverpool yesterday. It's quite funny. He's clutching some spectacles there, which the Daily Mail have actually made a bit more of a virtue of. They're circling them because, of course, he is supposedly responsible for Keir Starmer getting some nice new specs. But there we go. That's the first tranche of your front pages. But I'm going to reintroduce my panel now because there's a story that's not on the front pages, but we thought we would bring to you, which I think is quite interesting. 70% of National Trust staff are, quotes, progressive activists, apparently. That's according to the charity's Director General. That was at a Labour Party fringe event run by More in Common. So Hilary McGrady said, the reality is, I would say that 70% of my staff and volunteers would be regarded as progressive activists. Now, More in Common's research revealed that only 22% of, quotes, progressive activists are proud of being British, significantly lower than the 59% national average. So McGrady's comments come after the National Trust found itself facing a growing number of accusations about wokeness and tanking membership figures. So can these people really be trusted to preserve our nation's heritage? Emma, I know you care deeply about our national heritage. The idea that 70% of people at the National Trust are woke progressive activists, is that a problem?
Yes, and it explains a lot, doesn't it? I mean, we've seen so many stories over the years. One of the big ones was that they released and funded this report into their own properties, putting several properties on the naughty step, including Churchill's house, Chartwell. In one of them, they put Wordsworth on the list because he tangentially had a brother who was on, I think it was an East India Company ship to China or somewhere. So very tangentially related. But that's the point, is that I think, you know, the issue is that the people who are supposed to be the custodians of our heritage, probably, I mean, many of these people, if they are such progressive activists, are sort of inclined towards the vandalism. And I don't mean physically, but I mean that the kind of, you know, repudiation, rejection and denigration of our cultural heritage. And the National Trust properties, and if ever people have been to them, the people who are on the ground, the volunteers, are wonderful, really, really passionate people who care about those properties. And people love going to National Trust properties. But the fact that there are so many people who are in the institution, like in all of our institutions and museums, who hate the heritage they're supposed to be looking after, is a massive problem.
I do find that odd, isn't it? If you are an ultra-progressive activist, Benjamin, why would you choose to work at the National Trust? I find that a bit odd, unless you wanted to stick a plaque under everything that said, you know, here, be a racist.
I mean, I think it shows that clearly they're not the parody that is trying to be painted, that these are people that care a great deal about our national heritage and about these properties and gardens and all the rest of it. But also, you know, they don't necessarily think all of those things that were stated in a completely separate poll of people that define that way. And I'm guessing the Director General of the National Trust hasn't actually checked how many people have particular politics. She was just plucking a number out of the air. The idea you're really suggesting is that if you believe in social justice, as I do, and maybe some of these staff do, that somehow they shouldn't work at the National Trust. I think it's fantastic that they care about the future of this country as well as the past.
What do you reckon to this idea that, you know, one of the heads here of the National Trust is at some Labour fringe event boasting about how 70% of their staff are progressive activists?
Well, I'm just not surprised that they've lost, I think it's 80,000 members from their membership.
89, I think
89,000,
yeah.
Because actually a lot of people who are members of the National Trust will be small C Conservative. That doesn't mean they vote for the Conservative Party, but they tend to be slightly older, they love our country, they probably, dare I say, watch brilliant channels like GBNews, and to have the organisation at such odds with their value set, I think, is why they're losing membership so quickly. Of course, the National Trust is a membership organisation. No members, no National Trust. Go woke, go broke. Well, it's time for them to start representing their members' views rather than a narrow subset of views from people who happen to take pay rises.
And to be fair, a former chair of the Tory party would know a lot about hemorrhaging members.
Whoa, there he is. You going to clap back on that?
No, I don't think they left when I was there.
OK, fair enough. Yeah, but it's interesting, though, isn't it? The National Trust, if you got, you know, you got all these wonderful buildings and wonderful things that are supposed to be there preserving. It does seem a little bit odd that we have this kind of ultra-progressive nonsense going on there. I think I've got time to just squeeze in one more story. I will go back onto the front of the Daily Telegraph because it is a big one. I know we've spoken about it a bit on the channel already today, but pubs may have to call last orders early in a fresh nanny state blow. So, Emma, again, I'll defer to you on this, but the pubs could be forced to close their doors early. Apparently, it's a move to roll back the continental cafe style of drinking introduced by Sir Tony Blair. I mean, what does all of this really mean? You're going to have to be locked up indoors by 9 p.m.
It's the exact opposite of what this country needs. London is dead. When people come from other countries, from other European countries, they're shocked by how bad the nightlife here is. When I was in Madrid, the city felt like it was alive. You know, it's the same thing in Rome. It feels...
They did ask you to leave, though, didn't they?
But the thing... I don't know what you mean, Benjamin. But I feel like so many people have commented on how bad the nightlife has become in London. This is going to be the death of pubs, and that with the smoking ban as well, to ban people from smoking in pub gardens. It's just, you know, they're just fun thieves, you know.
I just think it's not just, it's not just a London thing, you know. It's like, presumably it's rural pubs and places like that as well that could really benefit from the idea of a nightlife that goes on beyond 9 or 10 p.m.
The government of Victor Meldrews.
Coming just a few days after it was suggested by another think tank that we reduce the size of the Great British Pint, I think by a third, which would be an absolute disgrace.
This really is
This is just symptomatic of a government, and it doesn't matter whether it's Conservative or Labour, it's a government led by civil servants servants who are obsessed, addicted to telling people what to do. That's not the sort of Britain I want to live in. I want to live in a free society.
Very quick, very quick. All the polling says that that is the type of country most people would like. I absolutely hate it. I hate this idea. I hate the control on drinking and all the rest of it. But most people in this country would like the idea of less disturbance.
That's nonsense. There's no way.
It's not nonsense. People aren't libertarians. They love rules.
Well, it never ceased to amaze me how where I used to live up in the Lake District, how there was a couple that bought a house next door to a pub and used to drink in that pub before they bought that house. And then when they bought it, they campaigned to have that pub's opening hours shortened because they didn't like the noise. And I just thought, why do that?
It's like people who buy houses next to churches and then complain about the bells.
That's why we have terms like nosy parkers and whatnot.
We're going to have to razz it on, I'm afraid.
British tradition.
Coming up, we've got more front pages. We've got a viral video as well. And also, I've got some political pets for you, so don't go anywhere.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
When I knew that I was doing this segment this week, I feel like this week was a real homework task for me because I'll be honest, I haven't been around Scottish food much in my life, but I obviously know all the obvious. And I thought I'd bring in a selection of some of, I guess, the sort of the quintessential culinary delights of the North. I mean, we have in front of us haggis.
I think we should begin with some haggis.
So, Michael, I've never eaten haggis before. This is going to be the first time.
Well, have you eaten anything like haggis before? Have you eaten anything that is made from the intestines of an animal?
I mean, I've had things like chopped liver and, you know, a bit of offal here and there.
Well, there we are. I mean, I got a great surprise. I was holding a great... When I was in government, I was holding a great party in Scotland, and I had a lot of Spanish visitors, and I was offering them haggis, and I thought that they would be astonished by haggis and maybe repelled. But when they ate it, they said, oh, no, this is morcilla. So, you know, there is an equivalent in Spain.
Absolutely.
So if I recall, and you've probably been mugging it up, which I have not, but haggis is made within the stomach of a sheep.
Yes.
And you take the heart and the lungs and some other part of the sheep and you mash it up.
With onions, oatmeal, suet.
Yes.
And it's stuffed into the sheep's stomach. But a lot of the haggis you get these days, especially sort of the slightly cheaper varieties in supermarkets, it's usually an artificial casing. Oh. You know what? This is actually quite nice.
I think it's absolutely heavenly. And
it's very savoury.
To me, it's two things. Yes, to me, it's two things. It's both the taste and the texture. You quite rightly refer to the oatmeal going in there. So it's got this crunchy, granular sort of texture. Marvellous.
GB News, the People's Channel.
OK, welcome back. I've got some more front pages for you now. So we're going to start this round with the Daily Express. Fury as Labour silences winter fuel pay debate. Cowardly Starmer stalls vote on scrapping cruel cut for pensioners. Let's go to the Metro e-bike crime boom. Police seize 83% more. Apparently the e-bike seizures by police have almost doubled in a year amid a growing threat to pedestrians. So there we go. The Sun. Nick Strictly SOS. So apparently Strictly's Nick Knowles will find out this morning if he can dance on after injuring his left arm while changing a tyre. Well, the nation holds its breath, doesn't it? Let's go to the Mirror. Victory for truth and justice. Exclusive. Labour's new legislation to support victims of cover-ups. Apparently Keir Starmer will today, which is tomorrow for us, vow to bring in a Hillsborough law to stop state cover-ups denying victims justice. Interesting, because he is in Liverpool as well with the conference. So that's... But
also interesting that they blocked the Hillsborough inquiry for so long when they were last in government.
Well, there you go. Something that no doubt will be raised probably on tomorrow's show, I imagine. As you can see, I'm joined yet again by my wonderful press pack here. Now, we do have a bit of time, it's a bit pressed for time, but we do have a little bit of time to talk about some political pets. And the reason I'm doing this is because we've got Keir Starmer's new pet, haven't we? The new cat, Keir Starmer's new cat. So there it is, I believe, on your screens right now. Lovely stuff. But I thought, well, can anyone here name who these other people are? OK, who these other pets are? So we have, if we can rattle through, I think, we've got Rishi Sunak's dog. There we go. Does anyone remember the dog's name?
Ruby or something?
I barely remember Rishi Sunak's name.
Is it Ruby?
No guesses? The dog was called Nova.
No.
All right. OK. We're going to go to Boris Johnson's dog.
Dylan.
Dylan, yeah, there we are. Now, the Downing Street chief mouser, the current one, we all know.
Larry.
Yeah, that is Larry the cat. OK, now we're going to go back in time a bit here, because this is Larry with his first boss, David Cameron. Well, we all remember that. But who was the chief mouser at the Foreign Office?
Is it Salisbury?
You're going for Salisbury. Anyone remember the name of the predecessor? No? No,
but Larry's like 19.
It was Palmerston. There you go, Palmerston.
He looks like a Palmerston
who
too.
was the Downing Street chief mouser under Thatcher?
Humphrey.
Thatcher, Major and Blair. You've gone for it. Was Humphrey. There you are. We've got a couple more. Former Chancellor Geoffrey Howe's dog. Anyone know? Clues in the name Chancellor. And what do chancellors deliver? They deliver a budget. There it is.
That is a terrible name for a dog.
And I think bringing up the rear of this is Winston Churchill's dog.
All of them are called Rufus, weren't
Rufus the first, Rufus the second,
Rufus.
both miniature poodles, and as a proud standard poodle owner, I thoroughly approve
And they're
of
all
that.
buried beside each other as first, second and third.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's good. All right, now, actually, very finally, we've got Speaker Lindsay Hoyle's pets. All of them, right? So I won't get you to all guess on this one, but the dog is Betty. We've got a parrot called Boris, another Rottweiler called Gordon, a tortoise called Maggie, cats called Patrick, Dennis, Clem and Atlee. So there we go. So there we are. I thought that was... I'd just bring you some stuff there. Also, I was going to show you a clip. In fact, I will do it, actually. It's of women's rights activist Kelly J. Keane being doused in soup again at a rally. So this is the incident I believe we can show you.
How are you not shaking? I'm shaking my face. Jesus
Yeah, shocking stuff that, really. You know, Kelly J. Keane goes out, campaigns for women. A lot of regular viewers and listeners to this show will know who she is, and wherever she goes, she kind of runs a gauntlet of abuse, almost entirely committed by men, and that was apparently no different. So there we go. We do just about have time to reveal today's greatest Britons and Union jackasses. Now, we have about a minute on show, so we might just get to your greatest Briton, but who's yours?
My greatest Briton is the whole Reform Party for those beer lanyards.
Fantastic. Go on, Benjamin.
My greatest Britain is the victims of Mohammed Fayed who have spoken out. But I also think strongly that the HR people and the company execs that allowed him to be able to cover up and continue to do so, they should be prosecuted too.
OK.
So my greatest Britain is Rob Jenrick, who happened just to be running past a photographer wearing a T-shirt saying Hamas are terrorists. I'm not quite sure that he should be leader of the Conservative Party, but I think he's got guts to do that.
Not paid for by the taxpayer, I imagine.
Well, there we go. It might have been a gift, we don't know. But, all right, look, really strong choices. I have gone for Robert Jenrick for the Hamas terrorist thing. We haven't got time to do the Union Jackass, unfortunately, but thank you very much, everybody, for a wonderful show. Much appreciated. And thank you very much, everybody who's watching and listening. Headliners are up next.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Thanks for joining me for your latest weather updates from the Met Office here on GB News. It's been another very wet day, but the rain will at least be easing from many areas overnight, and generally a much drier day tomorrow, although there will still be some rain across Scotland. Scotland and Northern Ireland have been largely dry today. It's been across England and Wales where we've had the heavy and persistent rain from this area of low pressure. Still, Met Office yellow weather warning remains in place as that rain does start to ease from central parts, but staying pretty soggy across eastern England well into the night. Drier elsewhere, but we will see some rain just creeping into northern Scotland. Temperatures in Scotland with some clearer skies, dipping to single figures, but most staying in double digits. On to Tuesday, overall a much drier day, particularly where we've seen the heavy and persistent rain today over these central areas. It will be a wetter day, though, in northern Scotland, and with the wind coming in from the northeast, feeling pretty cool as that rain sets in across the Moray Firth in particular. A few scattered showers coming into Northern Ireland during the morning, and the odd one over northern England too, and the remnants of today's rain still clinging to the coasts around East Anglia and Kent. But generally speaking, across England and Wales, a much, much drier day, thankfully, compared to today. The rain will keep going across northeastern Scotland. We see a few more showers coming into southeast Scotland and across northern England and North Wales too. Across the Midlands, southern England, quite a bit of cloud, but some bright spells coming through. A bit of sunshine in Northern Ireland is possible also. On the cool side, temperatures struggling up into the low teens across the north, maybe high teens further south. A chilly start to Wednesday, by and large a dry start, but we will see more rain creeping in from the southwest as the day goes on. Some showers in northern Scotland, but many areas dry and bright for much of the morning until this next area of rain comes in, and that is a sign of things to come for much of this week before things then turn colder towards the end of the week.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good luck. Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Luis Elizondo says that he worked at the Pentagon and that he knows that they have recovered material that is not from this Earth. He resigned after believing his government wasn't taking the threat of UFOs seriously. So have they been covering up alien material from us?
I don't think the claims that are being made in Luis Elizondo's book, Imminent, are new, but I think what we have to pay attention to is the seniority of, one, Luis Elizondo, and two,